Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CTC's SB1 Accountability and Transparency Guideline Update Workshop. We're just going to wait for a few more minutes to allow attendees to log on. So if you're here for the SB1 Accountability and Transparency Guideline Update Workshop, you are in the right place.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dawn Chesser with the California Transportation Commission, and we're getting ready to start our workshop for the SB1 Accountability and Transportation Guidelines. So we still have a couple of people signing on, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I have commission staff also is on helping today, and they'll be jumping in as needed. And I also have a couple of Caltrans folks from their SB1 office that is participating today as we go through the workshop. If you'll note over on your right-hand side under the handouts, we have posted your the agenda, the PowerPoint presentation, and a baseline agreement flowchart that Caltrans has put together. And so you have those handouts there for reference as we go through the information today. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Kayla for her to walk you through the webinar logistics. Kayla?
Thanks, Dawn. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the SB1 Accountability and Transparency Guideline Update Workshop. The workshop agenda, as Dawn mentioned, is located under the Handouts tab. You can also find the presentation PowerPoint there, and this can be downloaded and saved during the webinar. It can also be found on the Commission's website later this week when we have it uploaded. For participants joining us through GoToWebinar, please find the webinar panel located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you will find the audio, question, and handout tabs. Under the audio tab, you have the choice to listen in via the computer or telephone option. If you prefer computer audio, please select the appropriate box. If you prefer the phone call option, select the corresponding box and dial the phone number, access code, and audio PIN as directed by the automated system. Please note that if the audio PIN is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak should you have a comment. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These cannot be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee. We welcome comments and questions from attendees as part of each topic at this workshop. There will also be an opportunity for comments and questions at the end of the presentation. There are two options for participants to provide comments. You may click on the hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. You will then be unmuted and called upon to make your comment. Please be sure to state your name and affiliation prior to voicing your remarks. Also, please Also, please use the raise hand feature as early into the topic as you can give the system time to acknowledge you. If you raise your hand to speak, please do not lower your hand until you are done making your comment. This helps us ensure you can be unmuted properly. You may also use the questions tab to submit a question or comment. Please type in the topic you are commenting on and your comment. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. You will not be able to be on camera while making comments. Thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate you sharing your time with us. Back to you, Dawn.
Okay, thanks, Kayla, for that. So I just want to let you guys know, this is Dawn again. My video is not working on my computer, so bear with us as we try and fix it, but in the event it's not fixed, I guess you'll just have to hear my voice. So lots of new people on here that I haven't met before. Some of the individuals on here that have registered I have met and talked to. So that's good to see your guys' name, and welcome to all the new ones that I haven't seen. I encourage you to participate in questions. Don't hesitate to participate and ask those questions because lots of questions are always good. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the agenda review. And this is just basically shows you what our focus is for today, which we're just going to be talking about schedule, the purpose and need, subsequent workshops, baseline agreement requirements, and a proposed new process that we're thinking about. And then obviously we'll be just wrapping up and closing with any action items or next steps for the following workshops. Next slide, please. So for today's our first workshop. We anticipate having one more workshop, which would be workshop number 4 on October 4th. And then after that workshop, since we have several new commissioners that have joined us over the past couple of years, commission staff will be doing an internal briefing with those commissioners late October, early November to get them up to speed on what our SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines are about, and to answer any of their questions or address any of their concerns. At that time, if the commissioners bring up questions or issues that they would like to see addressed in the guidelines, then we will be doing a third workshop, and that'll be about mid-November. We also anticipate doing our draft guidelines, presenting them to the commission at our December meeting, and then adopting these guidelines at our January meeting. And I'll just pause here for a second to see if we have any questions regarding the schedule.
Thanks, Dawn. I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions right now.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. If you guys do think of a question for the schedule, you can always ask it a little bit later, or you can wait till the end and we can just open it up for any questions. Okay, so on to slide number 6. So I want to reiterate for the purpose and need of these guidelines. And what I have here on this slide is very specific language from the legislation. And so I just want to read it because it means a lot to the commission and commission staff and why we have these guidelines and why we do what we do. So it specifically states, it is the intent of the legislature that the Department of Transportation and local governments are held accountable for the efficient investment of public funds to maintain the public highways, streets, and roads, and are accountable to the people through performance goals that are tracked and reported. As you can see on the screen, I have held accountable and tracked and reported as underlined in bold. And those are two things that are very specifically outlined in the accountability guidelines. And so our guidelines are basically created around this specific language. And we take it serious and we want to make sure that we are doing what it says that we're supposed to be doing. And let's see, questions, comments before we keep going?
No questions or comments at the moment.
Okay, and then I want to also make sure, oh, you can go ahead and advance the slide. And then I want to make sure if people can hear me talking, I want to make sure that we're good there. It doesn't look like anyone is saying.
I will say I can hear you both loud and clear.
Okay, good. All right, great. So continuing on with the purpose and need, our guidelines, they're set up, to communicate our expectations, emphasize program and project accountability, identify and report expected and actual benefits, and deliver the approved project scope, cost, and schedule. And then lastly, it's to inform the legislature and the public as to what these funds are being used for. So I know in the past that the accountability guidelines can be sometimes cumbersome, but again, this is the purpose and our need, and based on that legislation, we're going to continue doing these items. Let's see. Is there a question, Kayla? Because I have a little box blinking.
Yes, Dawn, we do have a question.
Okay.
So let's see. So this is from Dawn Batiste. How are you defining accountable? Delivering each and every measure identified or reasonably justifying decisions related to the scope of work and delivery of a project and its primary components.
Okay, thanks for that question. So I think it is all of those things. It's just not one very specific definition of accountability. It is when the SB1 programs are adopted with very specific projects that outline the scope, cost, schedule, and benefits, then that's what we're expecting to be delivered. In the event there's changes, then there's processes in the guidelines that give you opportunities to potentially change things, which then that becomes what is you're being held accountable for. Is there another question?
I'm not seeing any more written questions at the moment and no hands raised right now.
Oh, somebody's doing that for me. Okay. Kayla, I just want to verify that I was unmuted when I was answering that question.
Yes, you were.
Okay, all right. Sorry, you guys. This is kind of difficult not having the video to make sure things are moving as long. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to slide 8. So these are the topics that I have, besides what we're going to talk about today, these are the topics that I have identified that will be coming up in our subsequent workshop, which would be in October. And so we're going to be talking more about reporting, the consequences, and the audits. And I would like to know if there's any other items or topics that the group would like to have a broader discussion or a bigger discussion on. And I'll just pause here for a second to see if any questions, comments come in. Nothing. Okay, it doesn't sound like anything's coming in yet. Okay. All right. The next slide is, this is a baseline agreement flowchart, and this was prepared by Caltrans. And I believe we have Angel from Caltrans on the line that I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her to kind of review this and then take any questions or comments.
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So quick mic check. Can everyone hear me?
I can.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to assume everybody else can too then. Okay, so this is really more of the internal Caltrans process. So for both on or off system projects, we have a routing process within the department to make sure that a baseline agreement is fully vetted and supported by various areas within the department. So whether it's local assistance or whether it's going through project management, we want to make sure that the district director is engaged, and also the local assistants or project management staff within the district are all fully aware, just to ensure a smooth implementation of the project. And then it's routed through the deputy director level within the department, and then through my program, and then we facilitate the sign-offs with our director, so Tony Tavares now, and then we move that over to the commission for their review and approval. And of course, there's lots of interaction along the way too, just to make sure that everybody's good with what's in the baseline. So I know I went through that really quickly, and everybody can see the chart, so I didn't want to read the chart to everyone. But if there's any questions or concerns, I'm happy to entertain those. A lot of this is really internal, kind of behind the scenes once we receive the baseline. And as always, if there are ever any questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me. We're always happy to entertain any questions, and always try to make improvements for a smooth process.
Okay, thanks, Angel. Let's see. I don't have any questions on this. I would say the only thing I would do is remind everyone that this is a process, and to get into executive director's offices to get signatures, sometimes can take a little bit. So just be patient with the process, and be timely on your submittals would be much appreciated.
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely. And just a reminder for folks, the baselines are due after the program is adopted within 6 months of the environmental document being approved. So sometimes that's like right up the gate, and then other times it's a little bit more time, but I know it can be challenging. And yes, thank you, Dawn, for mentioning that. It can take a little while to get through the entire process, especially when we have a lot at the beginning when a cycle is first adopted. So absolutely. And we are looking at different ways to make that faster, but still also help support some of the accountability and transparency that Dawn mentioned towards the beginning. we want to make sure that Caltrans is fully supporting and doing what we need to do to support your agencies in accomplishing these objectives. So that's part of the reason for the whole baseline agreement, and the reason that we route it through various places within the department, because we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to support all of these projects in your agencies throughout this process.
All right, perfect. Let's see. Any questions or comments coming in?
Yes, Dawn, we do have a written question from Rachel Morricone. This may be for you, Angel, too. Can you remind us thresholds when baseline agreements are required? For example, it is my understanding that not all ATP projects need a baseline, but maybe that changed.
Dawn, do you want to take
Okay,
that?
so this is Dawn. No, I'll take it. Thanks, I'll take it. So in the next slide, we'll be talking about which projects are subject to the baseline and thresholds or any changes. So hang on to that question, and if we don't answer that after the next slide, then we'll address it. Any other questions about the Caltrans flowchart?
Thanks, Dawn. Yes, we do have one more written question from Denise Arriaga. Can you talk about what the current process is for agreements with a package of projects with several implementing agencies, specifically the advantages or disadvantages of having more?
I'm open, Dawn, if you'd like to take that, or I can go either way.
Yes, no, here, I'll take it. So the advantages or disadvantages of having a segmented project would not necessarily be covered in the accountability and transparency guidelines. The baseline agreements are an action that comes after a project is programmed, when the programs are adopted. So that question is more suited for the very specific programs. And I would say, if Matthew, if you wanted to add anything additional to that, then you could jump on and add it, but it's not relevant, I don't think, to the accountability guidelines.
I agree with Dawn. It is not. That would be a very specific question to ask, or to reach out to a program manager for either TSEP, LPP solutions, or ATP.
Oh, Matthew, you're breaking up.
Oh no, that was all I was going to say. Is that I agree with you.
All right.
I don't think that's a question for the accountability guidelines process. I think that's a better suited question for the program managers.
Okay, all right. All righty. Did we have any additional questions, Kayla?
No hands raised and no written questions.
Okay, all righty. So we'll go ahead and then move on to slide number 10. And this is basically the thresholds that someone had asked about earlier. So we are not proposing to change any of the guidelines with regard to thresholds for the active transportation program or the competitive local partnership program. So the thresholds that are currently in the guidelines remain, or we're proposing to keep those. We're not changing those. And then for solutions for congested corridors and trade corridors, again, we're not proposing to change those, and those are all projects. What we are proposing to change is for the SHOP program, and the SHOP program had some additional language about construction or right-of-way and the dollar amounts for those two phases. And so we removed that language, and we're only going to say that the baseline agreements are required for projects with a total project cost of $50 million or greater. And that is consistent with what is in the SHOP guidelines that was adopted back in May of 2022. And so I'll give you guys just a couple of seconds to ask any questions about this. Okay, it doesn't sound like anything is coming through. Again, we'll have time at the end of the workshop to answer any questions on any of the slides, so we can always come back. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to slide number 11. So these are the timelines that we currently have, and what I've done is I have provided proposed changes in strike through and bold, and some of these are from having previous working with the baseline agreements in the past 2 cycles and taking into account timeframes and comments while we were working through those first 2 cycles. So the first one is we're changing the 4-month requirement to 6 months after program adoption. And then the second bullet is we're giving you 6 months instead of just 60 days to do the baseline agreement for projects that meet the threshold after program adoption. And those are instances like where you have cost increase, or there's supplemental funding, like in the Trade Corridors program, where you can have potentially supplemental funding approved through the Caltrans process on the Caltrans projects. And then the third one is we currently have the baseline agreement is required after the CEQA process is completed. We are now going to add in after CEQA and NEPA if NEPA is applicable, so that all of the environmental phase is completed and just not a portion of it. So I will let you guys think about those things for a couple seconds here before we move on. Can everyone see that?
Not seeing any. Oh, we do have a comment, Dawn, from Kenny Cow. These changes seem reasonable, but I'm not seeing any other further questions or comments or raised hands.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kayla. And Kayla, I think, are you doing my unmute and mute for me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm over here clicking that button. Okay, and then I think for the last question on the ATP thresholds, Lori Waters actually provided that information in the chat box, and the current threshold is a total project cost of 25 million or greater, or a total programmed amount of 10 million or greater in the ATP funds. And so we are not proposing to change that. We're going to keep that as is. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So this slide is basically some new proposed language and clarifications that we've had questions on, again, in the past 2 cycles. So we're going to add some additional language that says that the baseline needs to reflect the responsibility to pay for cost increases in the baseline agreement for the projects that are jointly nominated by Caltrans and another local agency. We're also going to clarify that the ATP non-infrastructure projects, that the baseline is not required for the allocation of the NI portion for an infrastructure and non-infrastructure combination project. And that, and then the third bullet is some generic language that I was trying to put in there that doesn't have date specific. And I know for cycle 2 in the program adoptions, there was some resolution language that indicated when baselines would be required after we do the full program adoptions. And so what I was trying to reflect here is after we do a program adoption, and the project wants to come in either for that first month for allocation or within 6 months, that the baseline agreement, you would have 6 months to do your baseline agreement even though you got your allocation sooner than that. And this is just for the 6 months after program adoption. After that, then you have to have a baseline agreement before allocation. So again, this was just trying to put some generic language without any very specific dates tied to cycle 3. And so I'll let you guys think about that for a second and see if there's any questions or comments.
Dawn, not seeing any hands raised at the moment and no written questions or comments right now.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. So you guys seem to be pretty easy this afternoon, so great. I was expecting lots of questions. Okay, moving on to slide 13. So this slide just kind of outlines when a baseline agreement is required, or I'm sorry, when a baseline amendment is required. And so I have our existing language indicates that baseline amendment is required when we program additional funds in a subsequent programming cycle, and that the project now meets thresholds if the program has thresholds. And then if there's a change in responsible parties that were not a party to the original project, this would be like adding a new party. And then of course, we want to keep the language that says a baseline amendment would be at the discretion of the commission. Then the second part of this is we're proposing to add 2 more scenarios to the guidelines because we've had these 2 things happen often. And so we're going to add language that says a baseline amendment is required when a project is segmented or split after programming. And also if we have a reduced scope along with a reduction in SB1 funding, we're going to need to do a baseline amendment. And so we're proposing to add these 2 scenarios because, again, we want to be accountable for where the money's going, and we want to make sure that all of us understand what the actual project is going to be delivering, and we want to hold the individuals or the agencies accountable for that through this baseline agreement. And then I would like to hear if there's any other suggestions or comments about when a baseline amendment would be required.
Dawn, not seeing any hands raised at the moment and no written questions or comments.
All right, then let's go ahead and move on to slide number 14. So this is a baseline agreement addendum. And what we're trying to do here is, because we know that the baseline agreement process can be time consuming, lots of paperwork, lots of signatures. So what we're trying to propose here is a way to help reduce processing time and paperwork. And what we were thinking is calling this a baseline addendum. And it would be used to document minor adjustments or corrections to an already approved baseline agreement. Instead of it being signed by the executive directors for commission and Caltrans, it would be signed by the applicant, the implementing agency, and the Caltrans SB1 program manager, who right now is Angel Pyle, and then the commission's SB1 deputy director, which is Matthew Yazgat. These types of actions would not be a formal commission action, so it would not go to our regular commission business meetings, whereas the baseline amendment does still have to go to the commission meetings. And we would also post these requests to the commission's website, and we would create some kind of form that would be standardized for everyone to use. And so, again, we're trying to help with processing time and paperwork and not make, additional work for individuals, but yet we're still being accountable for the actions, and we're still holding you accountable for any changes that may fall into this. Let's see. And so if we were to use this process, what my question back to the group would be, what kind of minor adjustments or corrections would this process be used for? And so I'd like to hear your guys's suggestions if you have any. If not, then we can always try to come up with some, but again, I would like to hear from you guys. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes here, or a couple of seconds to kind of formulate your questions and submit them.
Dawn, we do have one comment that came in. This is from Rachel Morricone. They said, seems like minor schedule changes within programmed fiscal year could be an addendum.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Let's see what else we get before I make any additional comments here.
Dawn, we do have a hand raised, so I'll turn it to Celeste now to take care of that.
Thanks, Kayla. Kenneth Cow, you are unmuted.
Hi, Dawn. Good to hear your voice. This is Kenny from MTC.
Hi, Kenny.
Hi. I was going to write this, but it became too long, so I figured I'll just raise my hand. I really like the idea of this addendum and a different, more streamlined process rather than going through the commission. And I can see this being used for a lot of the minor adjustments that you kind of mentioned and that Rachel mentioned. So I think like minor changes to cost, scope, and schedule that are like within a certain variance, I think that would be appropriate. So like if 6 month change or something that isn't too deviating from the original proposed baseline, or like if there's a minor cost increase and the sponsors have agreed to fund that themselves, which they have to anyway, that seems like it could be, if it's a minor like 5% increase or something with a certain percentage. And similarly, I think if there's like maybe an increase of benefits, the sponsor wants to add something and they're going to pay for it themselves, that seems like it'd be reasonable for it to go through this process rather than having to go through the commission. So I think we can actually put a number of pretty standard things through this rather than jamming up the commission agenda. And then of course you'll be putting this on the commission website, but you can maybe even do something that we do, which is, report back every quarter or every 6 months to be like, hey, commissioners, these are all the things that we did over the last 6 months that we didn't go to you because they fall under these, guidelines or these rules. So at least the commissioners can see, oh, hey, we did these changes and, they're pretty minor and move on from there. So those are my thoughts.
All right, thanks, Kenny. Do we have any additional ones coming in?
Hey, Dawn, we actually have another hand raised, and I'll go ahead and unmute Rachel Morricone.
Hey, Dawn. Nice to hear your voice. Piggybacking on Kenny's comment, when he said 5%, I kind of actually had a little reaction to that one because just thinking about Caltrans' presentation to the CTC last week where bids have fluctuated some, and especially if a local agency is covering the balance of the cost increases when bids come in. It'd be nice to have a process where we wouldn't have to go back and have baseline amendments that could delay award of the contract. So I think that there's already an option to do that, but just, you know, making sure that it's codified that we wouldn't have to do a baseline amendment before being able to award those contracts would be helpful, even if it's more than a certain percent. And then I have another question, which is, if an agency decides to, maybe they have an additive bid because they just figured out that, you know, kind of with dig once policies or other things that might come up, that they might want to expand the scope of what's going into their contracted items, though they'd be paying for those added items, you know, that be allowable and maybe not require, you know, maybe there's a check-in with CTC staff before that happens, but not necessarily requiring a baseline amendment. So that'd be my other thing for the CTC to think about, especially if it's funded by the local
Rachel.
agency.
Right. So just a quick question, Rachel, about that additive bidding at this when you award. I'm assuming that when that, and this is for the entire group, I'm assuming that when that happens, that the agency is then turning around and reporting that through the quarterly reporting that the Caltrans does, so that we know that that's happening. And you're not doing a separate report, or if you're doing it separately just to commission staff. So can anyone jump in and clarify what they're doing in that process?
I cannot fully clarify it because I'm not sure the exact scenario where it might come up, but I'm just thinking about a couple shop projects and some other local projects where, you know, maybe there were two things planned in an area and it just made more sense to combine the two projects to get better bids and reduce the impact on traveling public for construction periods.
Right.
So I'm not sure if the CTC, when the scope of what the CTC evaluated, you know, maybe it was X, Y, and Z benefits, but now we're adding in some other component to a bid, you know, we project sponsors, you know, do you want to then start tracking that additive item that's not actually funded by the SB1 programs or not? I guess that's kind of something that CTC would want to think about. Or if that expands the program and inflates what's happening through SB1.
Right. So that's why I'm asking, going back and asking the group, how are you guys reporting that information? Or maybe you're not reporting it. So something for the group to think about. What is your own process is it when it comes to that in terms of the current guidelines and the program, the accountability guidelines and the program guidelines? And so I'm not sure all the individuals that are participating today may not be the individuals that actually handle that, but that's something for you guys to maybe think about. And if you could send me an email or call me, that would, my contact information is at the end of the webinar. You can always let me know, because I would be curious to know when those types of scenarios happen, how are you informing either Caltrans or the commission, and what process are you using to do that? Or maybe you're not informing them, and I'd like to know that too.
Hey Dawn, this is Celeste. We actually have an additional hand raised. Kevin Busey, you are unmuted.
Yeah, Kevin Busey. Yeah, I had that issue occur where we had a project that we had a two-phase project, two segments. They're both funded through LPP. One project came way under bid, and then on the next project, we actually increased the scope of the next project beyond what was in the baseline agreement to ensure that we captured all the SB1 dollars. And then we had to inform, we basically had to inform CTC staff in advance of doing that, and then process an amendment through CTC prior to award. That's how we did that. So I think there's I think I was just going to comment on this. I think there's if you sign the baseline agreement, it sort of assumes that you're going to hit like certain criteria, right? As far as you're going to do so many number of lane miles of bike lanes, for example. If you end up building more than that, you're actually performing higher than what is anticipated in the baseline agreement. So does that an addendum or not? I think you should give the agency some flexibility there. If they're going to do more with the money than what was initially anticipated, that's a good thing, and they should make that as easy as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And can I ask what agency you're with, Kevin?
I was at City of Elk Grove at the time.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so as anyone comes on and speaks, having your agency, if you could just let me know which agency you're representing, that would be great.
Awesome.
So okay. I do have some comments on all of these feedback from you guys, but do we have any other comments before I kind of respond?
Hey, Dawn, I'm not seeing any additional hands raised.
Okay, all right. So just quickly to Kevin's point about if there are additional benefits, I don't see the need to do a baseline amendment or an addendum to document additional benefits, because that's a good thing, and you are basically delivering more than what you said you were going to deliver in the first place. But that would be required to be reported through the reporting process, and then also through the final delivery reports, which those two things are going to be in our next workshop. So if you're not reporting those additional benefits at that time, then that's where we want to start. That's where you would want to do that. Otherwise, how is the commission going to let anyone else know about this additional benefits that these funds have provided you the opportunity, to get even more for your dollar? So back to Rachel's and Kenny Cow's comment about minor schedule changes within, a threshold or a variance or within the same fiscal year. My concern with that is that our program guidelines very specifically say no schedule changes. So, and I'm just going to kind of talk through a scenario here, so hopefully you guys can follow me. So if we allow a schedule change through either an amendment or an addendum, we could do that, and then the next month there's another change, so we would do another addendum, and then 3 months later we could do another one, and then another one. At some point, I could see that becoming more of an issue, because now we're consistently changing the date that we're supposedly holding the project accountable to. So I do have some concerns with using this addendum process to change schedule dates. So I need to think about that. But given that the actual program guidelines say no schedule changes unless there's a time extension, that's a concern for me. And but again, I'll think about it, have some more conversations here in-house with the program managers here at the commission, and we'll see what we can come up with. So do I have any other questions or comments or suggestions about when we could use this addendum? And keep in mind, this addendum process is still being proposed. So we're just trying to, kind of get some conversations going around it and see how we can make it work.
Dawn, we do have one more written question. It's more of, I think, a general question for this slide. So this is from Young Joe Ryu. Will the addendum be approved by the CTC? Isn't it a contract with no formal commission action required?
Kayla, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes.
Will the addendum be approved by the CTC? Isn't it a contract with no formal commission action required?
Yeah, so the addendum would be approved by the Caltrans SB1 program manager and the commission's SB1 deputy director. So it would be approved at the staff level, and so it would not require a formal commission action. That's what we would be proposing. But the approval just at the staff level is going to hold the same weight as if it was approved at a formal commission act meeting.
Well, hey Dawn, this is Matthew, and I think I can add a bit more context to that, because I think I understand where maybe the confusion from the attendee who made the comment was. So a baseline agreement amendment is a very formal change to the baseline agreement, which ultimately, through a baseline amendment, it
Okay.
can,
Doesn't look like we have any more questions or comments coming in.
Matthew, are you there? Did we lose you?
No, yeah, I'm still here. I couldn't tell if we can cough this up to technical difficulties. We're a little rusty. I'll continue with what I was saying. So a baseline agreement amendment ultimately is a commission voted action to replace.
Did we lose Matthew?
Maybe.
Hang on, Matthew, 1 second. We need to figure out some technical challenges on our end. Dawn, can you not hear him? Is your sound? Hang on.
Matthew, can you hear us now? Or Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay, sorry, you guys. I'm obviously out of practice, so.
Dawn, Chester, do not apologize. I like to keep our workshops fairly lighthearted and open to technical difficulties. Hopefully our stakeholders understand that, but I will continue. So our baseline agreement amendment process is a formal commission voted action to ultimately replace the existing baseline agreement with the amended version. We are not changing I would say, like, the sanctity or the importance of a baseline agreement amendment. A baseline addendum is what we're considering, for lack of a better way of saying it, like a soft process by which the deputy director of SB1 programming, which is currently myself, as well as the program manager for SB1 at Caltrans, which is currently Angel Pyle, can agree to include additional information into the baseline agreement packet and it's typically going to be based on a commission approved action. So for instance, if a time extension is approved by the commission and we want to ensure that that record is included in the baseline agreement as information that will carry forward with the baseline agreement, it could be incorporated through this addendum process, but that time extension still has a commission action behind it. If we're seeing something like a schedule shift for like 3 or 4 months and it's within a fiscal year, that doesn't necessarily necessitate a baseline amendment, because the expectation is that, unless the schedule is shifting by fiscal year, which would require a time extension in the first place, that's something that, is captured through, the in-progress reporting process that we currently have. So those types of changes will be actually demonstrated in our SB1 semi-annual report. So, we're exploring this addendum as a means to make sure we're capturing appropriate information to keep, to keep all relevant commission voted items in the baseline agreement. But we by no means would we expect that this process kind of replaces the significance of a full-blown baseline agreement amendment. So because I just have to chime in on that, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that, you know, by the deputy director of SB1 programming at the commission and the program manager at Caltrans signing off on something, that would replace the authority of the commission voting on something. So if there was confusion about that, that is absolutely, we are not treating them one and the same. And hopefully I was audible that whole time.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Okay, any other questions come in or comments come in?
Hey, Don, we do have a raised hand. Mandy, if you are unmuted. Mandy, are you there? Was that accidental, maybe? Okay, that might have been accidental. Oh, there Mandy is. Hold on. Okay, Mandy, you are self-muted. There it is.
I probably raised my hand by mistake. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay, that concludes our raised hands for now.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's see. All right, so let's see the next slide. So the next slide is our closing and next steps. It's only been 1 hour, you guys, for this workshop. So let me just, I feel like there's probably lots of other questions or comments maybe. So before we go through this closing and next steps, let me just give everyone an opportunity to ask any question on any of the slides, or provide feedback on any other areas of the guidelines that you would like to comment on, or clarifications. So we'll just pause here for a couple of seconds, and see if we get anything else coming in.
Hi, Dawn. While we're waiting, we did just get a general comment from Nancy Adams. They said, not a question, rather a comment. Please keep it simple and try not to add more process for locals, including the baseline addendums. I'm not seeing any other hands raised right now. We did get another written question from Dawn Batiste, just a general question asking what specific topics are slated for the second workshop.
Yes, so the specific topics for the workshop number 2, let's see, we have it on, what slide do we have it on? And Kayla, if we could bring that slide up, let's see. It is on slide number 8. So for the October for the October workshop, so I have down that we're going to be speaking about reporting, and this is in the section of reporting, the consequences section, and then some additional discussions on the audit section. And the reason we want to do the audit section is because the audit folks have reached out to us and wanted to discuss the language in these accountability guidelines. So I'm going to be meeting with them separately, and then coming back to the workshop in October to talk about that section. So those are the 3 things that I have slated for that second workshop. And so Dawn, I think that answers your question. And then to the person that made the comment about no significant changes or additional paperwork, I agree with that comment. We're not trying to make it more burdensome or more paperwork. This proposed addendum process, we were hoping would cut down on some of the processing timeframes. but yet still holding the projects accountable and being transparent with any changes. Okay, if you want to go, Kayla, if you want to go back to the closing slide. So action items, I have a couple that I noted, and that was to kind of think more about the suggestions for the schedule changes through the addendum process. So I'll put some more thought into that, have some more discussions, maybe follow up with a couple of local agencies and get some more talk about those. Let's see, I think that was, oh, and the other item was that if any of you could share what your processes are when it comes to reporting back changes, specifically when you're have more benefits than what was approved in the baseline. How are you reporting that back to either Caltrans or the commission staff? That would be helpful for me, letting me know how you guys are handling that and when or if you're reporting back. Those were the two action items I had. And so kind of next steps is I'll continue working on the guidelines and have those very 3 specific topics for our October workshop. And then in the meantime, I again, just briefly, staff will be doing an internal briefing with our commissioners to kind of get them up to speed. And then we'll determine if we need a 3rd workshop. But in the meantime, October 4th is the next one. Kayla, can you go to the next slide that has my contact info on it? So here's my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to myself. So I'm leading the effort for this update of these guidelines. And of course, Kayla is assisting me. And then Matthew is our Deputy Director for the SB1 programming. So if we don't have any other questions, comments, you guys were really easy today. So for those that don't know, I've been gone from the commission for about 1.5 years, and I've come back to help out with these accountability guidelines. So there's lots of new names that I'm not familiar with, but don't hesitate to contact me if you want to chat through some things or want to provide me any additional comments or questions. That would be great. Matthew, do you have anything that you would like to add before we kind of sign off or check in for additional comments?
Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, just really briefly, I just wanted to say we just concluded our 10-month SB1 guidelines development process, and here we are less than a week after we adopted those guidelines, and we're having another workshop. So we really appreciate the attention of all of our stakeholders and those of you who are attending today. As Dawn mentioned, if you have any suggestions on the accountability and transparency guidelines that were adopted back in 2018, now is the perfect time to go back and look at those and bring considerations or suggestions forward to Dawn for the October workshop. So just considering that everything that we talk about is still subject to change based on final commission approval. And yeah, I'll say we're thrilled to have Dawn back working on this. Clearly she was integral at the commission getting SB1 programs through their first and second cycles. So welcome back, Dawn, and we appreciate your attendance this afternoon.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Let's see. Do we have any additional questions, comments coming in, raised hands?
Thanks, Dawn. I am not seeing any additional hands raised. and no written questions or comments regarding the workshop right now.
Okay, all right then. I guess we're done. I think this is probably the shortest workshop I've ever had. So I look forward to hearing from you guys. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. And we will talk soon or talk at our next workshop. So I appreciate everyone taking the time today. We do really value your input. So please don't hesitate. And we will go ahead and sign off if there's no last minute comments or questions. Okay, it doesn't seem like anything's coming in. So everyone have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you soon.